manage, which requires that you literally control. This is like mind control 101. It's like mind control, right? It's all the boogeyman in the world. Right? If you really want to challenge, if you really want to mitigate the attack, or the potential, not even the attack, the potential for attack. If you want to mitigate the potential for the attack, you really have to, at its base, talk about controlling the individual. That's where this goes. That's where this goes, right? So all those spooky mind control discourse is on the table. And whatever spooky way that you can come about figuring that out is on the table. A lot of it has been more hocus pocus than anything else. But, you know, I'm not going to discuss any of this formally. But there are ways in which you can manipulate intent if you understand the particular motivations to an extent. I'll just use the word motivations because everybody likes that word, but it's really not about motivations. If you can understand the particular motivations of the individual. Right? If somebody recognizes that I am motivated by capital, by gaining money, then they can control me in terms of my being motivated by money. Oh, we want Dr. Campbell to do X, and we see he's willing. It's funny. I'm not going to get too personal, but at the dentist's office, he's talking about his like a relative in the family, and the relative in the family travels a lot, and he goes where the highest bidder takes him. He has a very unique sort of professional training, and whoever has the most money, he goes there and he works with those people for X number of years. So he'll go to Kansas, he'll go to Arizona, he'll go to North Dakota, he'll go to California, he'll go wherever, because he's selling his services to the highest bidder. Well, if people recognize that you're motivated by money, then they recognize that insofar as they can pay you the most amount of money, they have total control over you. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Me personally, I don't think that he doesn't. Obviously, this guy doesn't think it's a bad thing because he's going where the money's best. So that's just a really, really sort of crass, obvious example to demonstrate that you can control the actions of individual actors, but more importantly, more difficultly, segments or even complete sovereigns, right? You can control actions if you understand agency. If you really, really, truly understand agency, you can control actions, which is the blackest of black power ever. It's the ultimate darkness. It is, though. It is, right? The desire. And I know it is. The desire to want to actually control biological human bodies. You can do robotics. It's cool, sure. But biological human bodies. To control biological, it is the most taboo power ever, as far as I'm concerned. But to say that there isn't an interest in that power would be a lie. Of course there's an interest in that power. Of course there's an interest in sort of the cliched sense. I actually have the book in the office. Do I have the book in here? I thought I had the book in here. Yeah, I do. It's the new version, because I have to get the new version, but the Manchurian Candidate, right? It's that. It is literally controlling a biological being as though it were robotic. That is the ultimate black magic, right? But the idea is, if you... Now, granted, I'm not saying that you can theoretically make your conceptual distinctions that precise so that you can sort of copy and paste the theory onto any general John Doe and have any general John Doe or community of John Does and Jane Does within the intelligence community perform action X. But the idea is, don't lie to yourself wherever you are in the world. That is ultimately what's at stake here. Right? What's ultimately at stake here is getting others to conform to your intent via whatever mechanisms you can have, whatever mechanisms you can implement, whatever mechanisms you find work in defensive strategies, but also in an attempt to propagate your ideology. So, I mean, this lecture, I have to admit, the last bit of this lecture is getting really spacey, but, you know, that's the nature of the work we do. So, the information in threat assessment management is significantly more disjointed, obviously. Point one, it's disjointed. Two, it's complex. That is, the process is not understood and requires interagency cooperation. I mean, interagency cooperation is sort of obvious, but the nature of threat assessment, for precisely these reasons, is so difficult because we're not talking, at least in the States now, right? In the States, we're not, this will have to change for people who view the external threat as being centralized. In the States, to my knowledge now, we are not, and I'd have to bracket this. So what I would do in writing this is I would formally conceptualize centralized threat assessment and formally conceptualize decentralized threat assessment. I would create two chapters. I would create not a chapter, like a part. Label the part threat assessment. First section would be the threat assessment of centralized threat, which is going to be a completely different type of threat assessment than the attempt to conceptualize decentralized threat assessment. Two totally different things, right? You can't, it would be a tragedy to do that. In the States, I would assume that if I follow the media and what our politicians say, who I believe to a great extent, of course I don't swallow everything, but I believe to a great extent, I do, that the threat is a decentralized threat. Well, okay, how do we protect ourselves from that decentralized threat? Where there was a centralized threat back in the 80s, the 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s, right? Where we're talking about a Cold War threat, we sort of did pretty well with that centralized threat. I mean, the centralized threat was effectively, the conflict was effectively mitigated, and I've already done this discussion, primarily because of intel. The question is intelligence equipped? This is the question. Is intelligence equipped to deal with decentralized threat? That's the question. And the question then goes further is, if they're not equipped, theoretically, if you get to the end of your threat assessment, your chapter on decentralized threat assessment, and you realize, holy crap, the intelligence community doesn't really have what it takes to do an analysis of, or to protect or to defend to the extent that they used to be able to defend against decentralized threats. There might be some new functioning that the power might need to create. There might be this new thing that has to emerge. I don't know that yet. I haven't started the reduction yet. I haven't done the logic. But I know at the end of the chapter on decentralized threat assessment, you're going to realize, oh no, they are equipped. They just need to strengthen this, or they need to strengthen that. This is really weak. This could be amended. Or you're going to realize, no, here is the nature of decentralized threat. Here's what intelligence community proper does. The community isn't in the position to protect against this type of, which means immediately what would happen is the system would generate this new thing, which is awesome. It might not need to. Oh, I can't wait to start writing. But the system would overnight generate this new thing in defense of that, if it were a credible need. I mean, it's just, for me, it's just amazing. It's just absolutely amazing, right? Anyway, so difficulties. I'm running out of time here. Since unlike risk management, where the problem is manifest as product of known process, the risk management, we know there is an inherency for failure or harm, unintentful harm within the thing. The analysis of threat is complicated by the ambiguity. See, I gotta be copying and pasting all of this, man. This is all good. The analysis of threat is complicated by the ambiguity or utter lack of knowledge of the process, because the process is based in human agency. Threat is based in human agency. This is the process. How do we make sense of this? How do we get access to that? I mean, I've done a book on how we get access to that, but it's not easy, though, how we get to conceptualize how we get access to the intent of another person. Right? There are ways around this again, but none of which I'm going to discuss publicly. So, the analysis of threat is complicated by the ambiguity or utter lack of knowledge of the process, that is, how attacks will or may manifest by whom and when, etc. The question then becomes, what percentage amount of information intelligence is sufficient to act on behalf, I should have put on, on is right, to act on behalf on national security, to act on behalf of national security, right? What's the threshold? We need information saturation. How much information is good? What percentage might we be able to... And you know what's funny about this? From what I heard about the Osama bin Laden raid, I watched something on TLC, and they said there was like a 30%. You know, it's not precise numbers, but